Imagine pouring just a flawless concrete foundation. Like the grading is perfect, the rebar is set exactly to spec.
Right.
The slump of the concrete was right on the money. And then the inspector walks onto the job site, looks at this absolute masterpiece of physical engineering, and
they fail you.
Exactly, they fail you. Not because the physical pour is bad, but because you didn't, hand over the carbon receipt for the concrete mix.
It's completely jarring, honestly. I mean, for a century, this industry has been built on what you can see, right? What you can touch and measure with a tape or a level. It's tangible.
Right, it's either plumb or not plumb, pass or fail.
Exactly. But we are moving into an era where the unseen metrics, specifically the carbon footprint of the materials themselves, they're going to carry just as much weight as the structural integrity of the build.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you can't prove the math on those unseen metrics, you simply, you won't be allowed to build.
Man. Well, welcome to this deep dive. If you are a construction business owner, a GC, or, really anyone trying to navigate where the building industry is rapidly heading, you are in the exact right place.
Definitely.
Our mission today is to explore a massive impending shift in the construction industry. The rapid transition to verifiable green building, and exactly what that means for your bottom line.
Because it really is about the bottom line now.
Right. We are unpacking a pretty heady stack of sources today. Industry alerts, regulatory updates, market intelligence. We really want to give you the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed on this.
Yeah, because we aren't talking about, environmentalism for its own sake today. We are talking about the business of building.
Okay, let's unpack this. The hook for today's deep dive actually comes from across the pond. The UK just launched something called the Net Zero Carbon Building Standard.
Yeah, huge deal.
And the reason this is sending shockwaves through the industry is that it's the very first framework in the world that actually measures and verifies whether a building is truly net zero.
And that verification piece, that is the entire ball game. For years, net zero was, it was essentially an aspirational marketing term.
Yeah.
A developer could plant some trees somewhere, maybe buy some cheap carbon offsets.
Slap some solar panels on the roof and call it a day.
Exactly. Slap a green plaque on the wall. There were no hard limits. But this new UK standard is a strict performance-based framework.
Okay.
It introduces absolute limits on the kilograms of carbon emitted per square meter. It is measurable, it's verifiable, and major UK construction firms are actually backing it.
Really? The big players?
Yeah, they have fundamentally changed the rules of the game from, tell me you're green, to show me the rigorous audited math.
That's wild. It's like we are moving from dieting by guessing, I had a salad for lunch, I'm probably fine, to strictly tracking every single macro and calorie on a spreadsheet.
Yes. You have to prove the numbers.
Right. But I have to push back a little here. It's easy to see how this works in the UK, right? They have a very different, heavily centralized regulatory environment.
Sure.
How soon until this actually hits a mid-sized U.S. contractor's desk? Are we talking a decade away?
Right.
Because a builder in Ohio or Texas might be thinking, yeah, that's a European problem.
Right. Well, what's fascinating here is that the UK standard is simply the template.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the proof of concept that verifiable carbon tracking can actually be executed at scale without completely grinding the industry to a halt. And it is absolutely hitting U.S. desks right now.
Today.
If we look at the United States, the Associated General Contractors, the AGC, is taking this incredibly seriously. They are hosting a carbon reporting town hall for Earth Week.
Wow, okay.
Now, the AGC is a highly pragmatic, business-focused organization. They aren't an activist group.
Right. They care about their members' ability to win bids and turn a profit.
Exactly. So when they start organizing town halls on carbon reporting and their climate change working group starts actively developing guidance specifically for U.S. contractors to navigate this, you really need to pay attention.
Because it means money is on the line. They see the writing on the wall.
Precisely. The pressure is coming from the top down. Federal contracts are already starting to include heavy sustainability requirements. And then you have the SEC's proposed climate disclosure rules.
Oh, right, the SEC.
Yeah. If public companies are forced to disclose their climate risks and their carbon footprints, that reporting requirement doesn't stop at the corporate boardroom.
It flows down.
It inevitably flows all the way down the supply chain, straight onto the construction project, and right onto the lap of the general contractor.
Right. But even if you never touch a federal contract or you don't build for publicly traded companies, you still can't just hide from this, right?
You really can't. Because it's a pincer movement. You have federal pressure at the top, sure, but state and local governments are already leading the charge from the bottom up.
Okay, where are we seeing that?
Well, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report tracks green building requirements by state and municipality, and the map is just lighting up.
Wow.
We're seeing things like New York's Local Law 97, which puts incredibly strict carbon caps on buildings over 25,000 square feet.
And those come with massive fines for non-compliance.
Massive fines. And we are seeing California's SeaCal Green Code getting stricter. We are seeing Washington's Clean Buildings Act.
Right.
If you build for institutional, commercial, or government clients anywhere near these types of jurisdictions, carbon reporting is coming to your job sites.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's move from the regulatory threat to the actual practical reality on the job site.
Let's do it.
To win these bids and, to comply with these local laws, contractors have to fundamentally learn a new language. You have to understand the vocabulary of carbon.
It's essentially a new trade skill.
Exactly. Our sources break this down into 3 distinct types of carbon, and I kind of want to spend some time walking through them because, frankly, the mechanics behind one of them sound like an absolute nightmare to manage.
Yeah, let's lay the groundwork. The first one is pretty straightforward.
Right, operational carbon. I think everyone intuitively grasps this one.
Yeah.
This is the energy efficiency of the building once the keys are handed over and it's occupied. It's the HVAC systems, the LED lighting, smart thermostats, the insulation. It's essentially the monthly electric bill.
Right. As an industry, we've been optimizing operational carbon for decades. It's how the building breathes and consumes energy over its day-to-day lifespan. We know how to solve for that.
Right.
But the second category is where the massive shift is happening. Embodied carbon.
Embodied carbon.
Yeah. The sources define this as the carbon footprint of the materials themselves before they ever arrive on the job site. The concrete, the steel, the aluminum, the lumber. And then, just to complete the trio, you have whole life carbon, which is just the math of embodied carbon plus operational carbon plus the eventual demolition and recycling of the building, decades down the road.
Okay, I want to zero in on embodied carbon because I feel like this is where the friction is. I understand how to read an electric meter for operational carbon, but how do you even begin to track the carbon footprint of a concrete pour or a steel beam?
Right.
I mean, steel is steel, concrete is concrete. How do I know what its carbon footprint is?
See, that exact assumption that steel is just steel is the misconception that will cost contractors millions in lost bids over the next few years.
Really?
Yeah. Concrete is not just concrete. Let's look at the mechanics of why.
Yeah.
Portland cement is the crucial glue that holds concrete together, right?
Sure.
To manufacture Portland cement, you have to take mined limestone and heat it in a massive industrial kiln to about 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which requires burning just an insane amount of fuel just to generate that kind of heat.
Exactly. But it gets worse. The chemical reaction itself, it's a process called calcination, literally strips carbon dioxide out of the limestone and releases it into the atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
So you have this double whammy of emissions. The fuel burned to heat the kiln and the chemical release from the rock itself. That is why traditional concrete is so incredibly carbon intensive.
Okay, so how do you fix that?
Well, if a supplier swaps out some of that energy-intensive Portland cement for recycled industrial byproducts like slag from steel mills or fly ash from coal plants, they drastically lower the embodied carbon of that concrete mix.
Without sacrificing structural strength.
Exactly.
So the materials look identical on the site, but their carbon histories are wildly different. How does a contractor actually prove that history to a developer or an inspector?
Through the tools of the trade. Specifically 2 things: environmental product declarations, or EPDs, and whole building life cycle assessments, which are known as LCAs.
Okay, an EPD, environmental product declaration. So is that basically like a nutrition label for a 2x4 or a steel beam?
Mm-hmm. That is the perfect analogy. Instead of showing you calories, protein, and carbs, an EPD shows you the exact kilograms of CO2 equivalent that were emitted to extract, transport, and manufacture that specific batch of material.
Okay.
It's a verified receipt of its environmental impact. And a life cycle assessment, an LCA, is how you bring it all together.
How does an LCA actually get generated? Are project managers just sitting in a trailer with a calculator and a giant stack of these EPD nutrition labels, manually adding them up?
Thankfully, no. Nobody has time for that. And LCA is generated using highly specialized software modeling.
Okay, good.
You take your digital blueprints, like your Revit model or your comprehensive materials list, and you plug it into an LCA software program.
Oh, so it reads the models.
Yeah, that software cross-references your exact material volumes against a massive global database of EPDs. It runs the complex math and spits out a comprehensive report showing the total environmental impact of your entire building over, say, a 60-year lifespan.
And it highlights the problem areas.
Exactly. It highlights exactly where your carbon hotspots are.
And that's where the contractor has the power to intervene.
Right.
If the LCA software flags your concrete as a huge carbon hotspot, you actively lower your embodied carbon score by making smarter material choices.
Precisely.
You find a supplier offering that low carbon concrete we just talked about. You swap out traditional structural framing for mass timber. You source recycled steel instead of virgin steel.
Yeah, or you utilize prefab components to drastically reduce on-site waste and, truck deliveries.
Right. Suddenly, the contractor who knows how to source these materials and actually collect the EPDs for them is the one who wins the bid for the new corporate headquarters down the street.
Which brings us to a massive psychological shift that needs to happen in the industry right now. Because I guarantee you there are contractors listening to this thinking, great, this is a massive new administrative headache.
Oh, yeah.
They're thinking, it's just a new compliance burden being forced on me.
So what does this all mean? Let's figure this out. If you are a contractor, is this just a new way to lose bids if you make a paperwork mistake? Or is this a genuine way to make money if you lean in?
It's a massive way to make money.
Because, wait, our sources say the global green building market is projected to hit $774 billion by the year 2030. That is an enormous pie.
Enormous.
But if the government is only mandating this locally in a few states right now, that doesn't add up to $774 billion. Government mandates alone don't move global markets that fast. Private equity has to be forcing this down the pipeline, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The institutions writing the checks for the mega projects are the ones demanding this.
You've hit the nail on the head. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the real pressure isn't coming from local building inspectors. It's coming from private capital.
Right.
Institutional investors, pension funds, and massive private equity firms are operating under immense ESG pressure. Environmental, social, and governance disclosure.
So they have rules they have to follow too.
Exactly. If a major commercial developer wants $100 million in funding from a massive pension fund, well, that pension fund demands strict ESG compliance. They need to know the carbon footprint of the asset they are financing.
Which means the developer turns around and demands that compliance from their general contractor.
Yeah, and the general contractor demands it from the subs. It flows downhill rapidly.
And if you can't provide the EPDs and the LCA, you simply don't get to touch that institutional money.
Exactly. You are locked out. And on top of that private capital, you have federal incentives. The Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, is leaving unprecedented amounts of money on the table through tax incentives and rebates for energy-efficient, low-carbon construction.
Wow.
If you aren't building green, you are quite literally leaving free money unclaimed for both yourself and your client.
People need to hear that.
They do. In fact, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence report highlights that construction technology searches are up 190%, with green tech being a massive part of that wave.
Wow, 190%.
Yeah. The early movers are actively hunting for the tools and the materials to win these bids right now, and they're going to capture a massive market share.
Okay, $774 billion and private equity backing. That completely reframes this from a compliance chore to a massive revenue stream. Which brings us to the playbook.
Let's get into it.
We've established the global shift, we've broken down the mechanics of the vocabulary, and we see the financial engine driving it. Let's get highly actionable for the listener.
Yes.
Our sources have distilled this down to a 5-step playbook for contractors. Let's take our time and walk through the 5 things a business owner needs to do right now so they don't get left behind.
Step 1 is the foundation we just laid. Learn the language.
Yeah.
You cannot bluff your way through this.
Yeah.
You need to intimately understand the difference between operational and embodied carbon. You need to know how to read an EPD and what goes into an LCA before your clients start asking you for them.
Right, because if a major developer asks you about your strategy for mitigating embodied carbon on a new build, and you give them a blank stare or just talk about LED light bulbs.
You've already lost the job.
Exactly. You lose to the competitor who understands the assignment. Okay, step 2. Source low-carbon materials now.
Crucial.
You can't just flip a switch the day you win a green bid and suddenly have 5,000 yards of low-carbon concrete ready to pour. You need to start building relationships with suppliers today.
And honestly, that might involve some pretty uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, for sure. You might have a steel supplier you've used for 20 years, and when you ask him for an EPD, he might just laugh and say, "I just sell steel, buddy."
Right.
You have to start pushing your supply chain now. Like, hey, I need documentation on the mill this came from. I need your environmental declaration.
That is a very real pain point, which leads perfectly into step 3. Track your carbon footprint. Start measuring this stuff today, even if it's completely informal at first.
Just to get a baseline.
Exactly. What materials are you currently using most often?
Yeah.
Reach out to those specific manufacturers and see what their carbon profiles look like. Establish a baseline for your standard builds so you actually know where you stand when a client asks you to improve upon it.
Makes perfect sense. Step 4 is straightforward but critical. Attend the AGC Carbon Reporting Town Hall for Earth Week. Or if you miss it, track down the recording or their published guidance.
Absolutely.
Again, this is your primary industry association telling you this matters for your business. Listen to the pragmatic advice they are giving to U.S. contractors.
And finally, step 5. Position green building as a competitive advantage. Do not wait for a local mandate or an investor to force your hand.
Be proactive.
Yes. The contractors who are going to dominate the next decade are the ones who can walk into a pitch meeting today and proactively offer a low-carbon alternative alongside their standard bid.
Oh, I love that.
They are the ones saying, here is the standard build, and for a slight premium, here is the verifiable low-carbon option that aligns with your corporate ESG goals. That is how you win premium clients.
It really feels like we're at a transitional moment in the history of the trade. Like, I compare this to the early days of moving from huge rolls of paper blueprints to digital plan management software.
Oh, man.
Remember how painful that transition felt?
It was brutal for a lot of folks.
Right. But the contractors who adapted first, the ones who trained their teams to bring iPads onto the job site, they eliminated rework, they communicated faster, they won the best jobs, and they scaled rapidly.
Yep.
But the ones who stubbornly clung to the physical rolls of paper, they got absolutely buried in administrative chaos, version control nightmares, and they just got left behind.
This raises an important question. How does a construction business actually handle the sheer volume of data required for this new era of green building? Because you are absolutely right about the administrative chaos. If you think managing paper blueprints or digital RFIs is a headache, wait until you see the data load required for verifiable carbon tracking. It is an absolute avalanche of documentation.
It's not just a mountain of PDFs, is it? It's actively managing the data inside those PDFs.
It is relentless. I mean, you are talking about categorizing hundreds of highly technical EPDs from dozens of different suppliers on a single project.
Unbelievable.
You are summarizing endless meeting discussions with architects and engineers about life cycle assessment tweaks. You have your project managers trying to extract minute details from spec drawings just to prove compliance against these new, strict local codes like New York's Local Law 97.
And on top of all that environmental data, you still have to build the actual building.
Exactly. You are tracking budget variances because maybe your low-carbon steel suddenly spiked in price, or you are trying to mitigate schedule risks because a specific mass timber component is backordered.
I'm just thinking about a 20-year veteran superintendent, a guy who knows how to build a 30-story high-rise blindfolded.
Right?
And now you're telling him he has to spend his afternoons learning carbon tracking software and categorizing PDFs of concrete mix designs? He's going to push back hard. That sounds like a recipe for project managers working 80-hour weeks just doing data entry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You risk burning out your most experienced people. Scaling a construction business in this new data-heavy environment requires incredibly robust operational systems.
You need software to handle it?
You have to be able to catch those schedule risks and budget variances automatically.
Yeah.
You need automated project health monitoring so your project managers aren't crushed by the sheer weight of the paperwork.
Yeah.
If your veteran superintendent is spending 3 hours digging through digital folders to find the correct EPD for a concrete pour before the inspector arrives, he isn't managing the build, and he isn't keeping the truth safe.
Right.
In order to succeed, the data management aspect has to become practically invisible to the folks in the field.
So, to bring it all together, the UK standard has definitively set a very fast pace for the rest of the world. Verifiable, math-based carbon tracking is the new reality. Embodied carbon understanding, the deep manufacturing footprint of your materials, is the new metric you have to beat.
Absolutely.
And there is a $774 billion global market waiting for the contractors who move first, learn the language, push their suppliers, and get their operational systems in order today.
And as we look toward that massive horizon, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Right now, all of our energy, all of this regulation is focused on net zero building.
Right.
How do we simply stop doing harm? How do we break even? But what happens when the materials of the future aren't just carbon neutral, but carbon negative?
Wait, really? Carbon negative?
Imagine a world where your construction project is actually acting as a giant sponge, actively scrubbing the atmosphere and pulling carbon out of the air for decades after you hand over the keys. Are you positioning your business today to be the one capable of building that future tomorrow?
That is a wild thought. A building that actively cleans the air just by standing there. That is where we are headed. Well, to scale your construction business without drowning in paperwork and admin, visit smartbusinessautomator.com. And if you found value in this deep dive, please subscribe, rate, review, and share this with your colleagues, your project managers, and your team so everyone stays ahead of the curve. Because at the end of the day, we are moving away from the comfort of the physical tape measure. The old way of just pointing at a physical foundation and saying pass or fail is gone. The new blueprint is invisible, it's heavily data-driven, and it is going to completely redefine what it means to build. Thanks for listening.